Danielle left the office earlier than usual, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The client meeting had gone perfectly. The contract was signed, her team got praise from the director, and, miracle of miracles in their fast-paced Atlanta marketing firm, everyone was told they could go home early. She glanced at her watch as she slid behind the wheel of her SUV, 6:30 p.m. On a normal day, she'd just be shutting her laptop. Tonight, she was already pulling out of the garage. The spring evening in Atlanta was warm but gentle. The sky over Buckhead was painted in soft pink and lilac, the kind of sunset that made the glass buildings glow. Danielle turned on the ignition, leaned back for a second, and closed her eyes. It had been a long day of negotiations, revisions, and non-stop calls, but it had all paid off. As she pulled onto the road, she turned on the radio. A smooth R&B track filled the car, something slow and soulful. The host was talking about the weekend forecast, but Danielle's mind drifted back to that morning. Marcus, her husband, had been standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone while the coffee maker gurgled behind him. "Babe," he said without looking up, "the guys from work are coming over tonight. We're celebrating that project I just wrapped." Danielle poured hot tea into her favorite blue mug. "Okay, what time?" "Around 7. You'll get home late anyway, so don't worry. I'll handle it. I'll order some wings and soul food. I'll grab the liquor." Across the table, their 8-year-old daughter Ava was poking at her bowl of oatmeal, legs swinging under the chair. "Daddy," she asked softly, "are we watching that cartoon tonight? You promised yesterday." "You said tonight for sure." Marcus didn't lift his eyes from his phone. His thumbs flew over the screen as he typed. "Not tonight, Ava. I've got people coming over. Important people. You go hang out in your room, okay? You've got a ton of toys in there." Ava dropped her gaze and stirred her oatmeal, which had already gone cold. She didn't argue. She never did anymore. Danielle had slid a hand over her daughter's braids. "Tomorrow, you and I are going to the park, okay? We'll get ice cream and see how high we can go on the swings." She nodded, but the disappointment in her eyes was heavy. Now, as she stopped at a red light, that memory pressed on her chest. Recently, Marcus came home late, snapping over small things, and Ava had started to shrink around him. Quieter, more careful, always in her room with her dolls and books. He used to read her bedtime stories and help her build Lego towers on the living room rug. Lately, he barely looked up when she spoke. A week ago, she'd come home and found Ava's watercolor painting crumpled in the trash. When Danielle asked, Ava shrugged and said it was ugly anyway. Right after Marcus, with his eyes glued to his laptop, had given it a quick, distracted, "That's nice, put it on the fridge," and gone back to his work. The light turned green. Danielle drove on, turned into their neighborhood, and immediately noticed the cars. A line of expensive vehicles was already parked along the curb. Luxury sedans, big SUVs. She recognized Marcus's coworker Darius's black Escalade, his project manager Lena's white Lexus, and a couple of other cars she'd seen at company events. "Oh, so it's the whole crew," she muttered. As she pulled closer to their building, she heard it. Music thumping, bass shaking the third-floor window panes. All the lights in their apartment were blazing. Voices, laughter, clinking glasses floated down to the street. Danielle parked, cut the engine, and sat there for a moment, staring up at their balcony. Something in her gut twisted, an uneasiness she couldn't name. She stepped out, locked the car, and headed toward the entrance. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and the faint sweetness of the blooming trees along the sidewalk. On the second-floor landing, their older neighbor, Miss Jenkins, peeked out through a cracked door, chain still on. "They are making a racket up there. My TV can't compete with all that noise. I was about to call the cops." "I'm so sorry, Miss Jenkins," Danielle said softly. "I'll tell them to keep it down." "You do that," the older woman muttered. "A child lives up there. No need for all that hollering." Danielle's heart sank another inch. She climbed to the third floor and stopped at their door. The music was louder here, the bass humming in the walls. People were laughing, a woman's bright laugh cutting through the noise, someone telling a loud story over everyone else. She reached for her keys, but her hand froze. Across from the stairwell, through the small rectangular window, she could see their balcony. The sliding glass door was partially open, and there, on the floor of the balcony, pressed against the railing, was Ava. Her little girl sat hugging her knees, shoulders shaking shaking. Even from the stairwell, Danielle could see her small body shivering. Danielle's stomach flipped. She jammed the key into the lock, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. Shoes were everywhere. Heels, sneakers, boots kicked off in piles by the entryway. The air smelled of cologne, cigarette smoke, and spicy takeout. From the living room, Marcus's voice boomed above the music. So I told the client, if you want cheap, hire some interns. If you want the real deal, stop haggling with me. Laughter exploded. Glasses clinked. Man, Marcus, you're ruthless, someone said admiringly. Danielle slipped off her heels and moved quietly down the hallway, past the open living room door. In a quick glance, she took in the scene. The dining table pushed against the window, covered with wings, sliders, sushi, bottles of top-shelf liquor. Half a dozen coworkers sat around the table, dressed up, loud, relaxed. Marcus stood at the head of the table, glass of whiskey in his hand, shirt unbuttoned at the top, flushed with drink and attention. No one noticed her. She went to the slightly open balcony door. Cool night air seeped into the apartment. Danielle pushed the door open and stepped outside. Ava was in the far corner, wearing a short-sleeved unicorn t-shirt and jeans, no sweater. Her small hands were red from the cold. Her face was buried in her knees. Danielle, baby, she whispered, dropping to her knees beside her. Sweetheart. Ava flinched and looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen, cheeks streaked with dried tears. Her lower lip trembled. Mommy, she choked, and launched herself into Danielle's arms. Danielle wrapped her up, pulling her close, feeling how badly her daughter was shaking. Ava tried to muffle her sobs, as if scared someone might hear. I've got you, Danielle murmured, stroking her hair. I'm here. You're okay. You're safe. She slipped off her blazer and lapped it around Ava's shoulders, rubbing her arms to warm her. From inside, the music thumped, another round of laughter echoing through the apartment. What happened, baby? Why are you out here alone? Why are you crying? Ava sniffled and wiped her face with the back of her hand. Daddy said I was embarrassing him. Danielle went still. What? Her voice came out too sharp. She forced herself to soften it. Tell me everything, sweetheart. All of it. You're not in trouble. I just need to know. Ava took a shaky breath. When the people came, Daddy told me to stay in my room, she said, voice cracking. So I did. I was drawing. I only came out to get water. I walked really quiet, I promise. I went to the kitchen and poured some water, and one of the men came in. He smiled at me and asked who I was. I told him my name. She rubbed her wrist, and Danielle saw a red mark there, in the shape of fingers. Then Daddy came in really fast. He grabbed my arm right here. It hurt. He told the man, this is my daughter. She's going back to her room right now. Everyone in the living room laughed. Danielle felt a burning in her chest, like someone had dropped hot coal inside her. He dragged me out to the hallway. He got in my face, and his eyes were scary. He said, I told you to stay in your room. Don't you dare embarrass me in front of my coworkers. Danielle's fingers curled into fists. I started crying, and he shoved me out here and said, go cry on the balcony so nobody sees you and ruins my night. And then he went back inside. She broke down again, sobbing into Danielle's shoulder. Danielle held her tighter, feeling her own hands shaking now. Her mind raced. How many times had Ava been dismissed as tired, moody, going through a phase, when in reality, she was afraid? How long have you been out here? Danielle asked softly. I don't know. A long time. I got really cold. I wanted to go inside, but I was scared he'd yell again. Danielle closed her eyes for a second, fighting the urge to storm into the living room and tear into Marcus in front of everyone. But she couldn't do that yet. Not while Ava was still shaking in her arms. Listen to me, she said gently, lifting Ava's chin so their eyes met. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. This is your home. You can walk into your kitchen and get water whenever you're thirsty. You didn't embarrass anyone. But Daddy said. Daddy was wrong. Very wrong. And I'm going to take care of this. I promise you. He will never treat you like this again. Ever. Do you understand? Slowly, Ava nodded. Danielle stood, helped her daughter up, and led her inside. They slipped past the living room again. This time, one of Marcus's coworkers, Lena, spotted her. Danielle, she called, smiling. We were wondering where you were. Come grab a drink. Marcus turned. For a brief second, before the practiced smile slid onto his face, Danielle saw it, tension, and something that looked like guilt. Hey, babe, you're home early. Come join us. I got that bourbon you like. Danielle didn't respond. She walked right past the doorway and into Ava's room. Get under the blanket, baby. Watch something on your tablet. I'll be right back. Mom, Ava whispered as Danielle turned to leave. You're not going to yell at Daddy, right? He gets scary when he's mad. Danielle sat on the edge of the bed and took her daughter's hand. I will never let him scare you again. If I have to yell, if I have to fight, I will. But you will be safe. That's all that matters. Ava nodded slowly and curled under her blanket, clutching her stuffed bear. Danielle stepped back into the hallway, closed the bedroom door, and leaned her head against the wall. Then she pulled out her phone. They'd installed security cameras a year earlier for a break-in in their building. One in the living room, one in the hallway, one in the kitchen. All footage saved for a week. Her fingers flew over the screen as she opened the app and scrubbed back to around 6:45 p.m. She watched as guests arrived, Marcus greeting them loudly, drinks poured, music turned up. She switched to the hallway camera. There was Ava, tiptoeing toward the kitchen with an empty glass in her hands. Danielle switched feeds. In the kitchen, Ava poured herself water. A moment later, Darius walked in, smiling, saying something to her. Ava smiled back shyly. Then, Marcus blew into the frame, face tight, jaw set. He grabbed Ava's wrist. Even without sound, Danielle could see her flinch. Darius's smile slipped into an awkward frown. Danielle read Marcus's lips. She's my daughter. She's going back to her room. He dragged Ava out of the kitchen. Danielle switched back to the hallway camera. There he was, bending down, getting in their daughter's face, lips moving fast, furious. Ava began to cry. He grabbed her shoulders, spun her around, and shoved her toward the balcony. Ava stumbled, caught herself, looked back at him, but he was already turning away, straightening his shirt as he walked back to his party. Danielle paused the video. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to tighten her grip on the phone. No more excuses. Not stress, not being tired, not just once, or she's dramatic. Enough. She took a slow breath, hit download on the clip, and walked toward the living room. Marcus was in the middle of another loud story. Co-workers hanging on his every word. The TV behind him was off, a big black 55-inch rectangle on the wall. Danielle! Lena waved again. Come sit! Danielle walked past her to the TV console. She crouched down, reached behind it, and found the HDMI cable they used for movie nights. Babe? Marcus chuckled nervously, watching her. What are you doing? We're talking shop. We don't need Netflix. She plugged the adapter into her phone, the cable into the TV, grabbed the remote, and turned it on. The brand logo appeared, then the input menu. She selected HDMI. Danielle, Marcus hissed, stepping closer. Can we talk in the kitchen for a second? Not yet, she said quietly, not looking at him. First, we're all going to watch something together. The room fell quiet. The music in the background suddenly sounded too loud, too inappropriate, and someone fumbled to turn it down. The video feed popped up. The kitchen appeared on the big screen. Ava at the counter, pouring water. Darius walking in, smiling. The easy little moment of kindness. Then Marcus storming in, grabbing his daughter's arm. That's your kitchen, right? One coworker muttered, confused. Danielle fast-forwarded to the hallway clip. Now everyone saw it from another angle. Marcus spinning Ava around, leaning into her face, his features twisted in anger, then shoving her toward the balcony. No sound, just the image of a little girl stumbling and wiping at her eyes. The room was dead silent. Danielle paused the video and turned around. For a moment, she didn't even see Marcus. She saw their daughter's red eyes. The old bruise on her shoulder from 2 weeks ago. The way she flinched at loud voices. This, Danielle said, her voice steady, is what happened in this apartment less than 2 hours ago. While you were all sitting here drinking and laughing, my husband shoved our daughter onto the balcony and told her she was embarrassing him. That's not what Marcus started, but his voice cracked. Danielle, you're blowing this way out of... I found her out there, crying, freezing, scared to come back inside her own home, and when I asked why, she said you told her she was a disgrace, that she needed to cry where no one could see her so she wouldn't ruin your night. Lena covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide with horror. Darius stared at the floor. Man, Marcus, one of the guys whispered under his breath. Danielle's gaze hardened. 2 weeks ago, Ava had a bruise on her shoulder. She said she fell in gym. Tell me the truth right now. Was that you grabbing her like this? She mimed his grip from the video. Because I'm done pretending I don't know what's going on in my own home. Marcus's mouth opened, then slowly closed. His face was pale, then flushed, then pale again. I never hit her. I just grab her sometimes when she doesn't listen. I don't hit her. I'm not that guy. Grabbing, shoving, yelling in her face, calling her a disgrace, that is abuse, Marcus. It scared her so badly, she would rather sit on a freezing balcony than walk back into the living room. Silence. Finally, Danielle took a deep breath. She said, I'm filing for divorce tomorrow.
Marcus stared at her like he didn't understand.
understand the words. You what? He stammered. You're going to blow up our marriage over one. This is not one thing, she said. But even if it were, one time like that is enough. Our daughter is terrified of you. That's the line. And you crossed it. Brianna pushed her chair back and stood up, clutching her purse. I'm so sorry, she whispered to Danielle, eyes glistening. I didn't know. It's not on you, Danielle said. You know now. Darius walked over, speaking low so Marcus couldn't hear. If you need a witness, I'll tell the court exactly what I saw in that kitchen. I've got a daughter Ava's age. That messed me up, seeing that. Danielle nodded. Thank you. I might need that. One by one, Marcus's coworkers gathered their things and left, avoiding his eyes. The last to leave, his buddy Aaron, paused in the doorway and looked back at him. You did that to your kid, man. I don't know how you come back from that, but you'd better try. Then he closed the door behind him. The apartment was suddenly too quiet. The only sounds were the fridge humming and the distant traffic outside. Marcus turned to Danielle, eyes wild and wounded. Are you happy? You just humiliated me in front of my team. The whole office is going to be talking about this. Danielle stared at him in disbelief. You humiliated me? She repeated slowly. You shoved our crying daughter out onto a balcony so she wouldn't ruin your night, and you're worried about office gossip? It's not the same thing, he shot back. This could affect my career. They'll see me as unstable. They'll judge me as a dad. They should judge you as a dad, she cut in. You cared more about looking impressive for your coworkers than the fact that our child was crying in pain and fear. I just wanted tonight to go well. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. I had important people here. I needed to look in control. She picked the worst time to wander out. The worst time to get herself a glass of water in her own house. Danielle stared at him like he was a stranger. Do you hear yourself? He turned away, pressing his forehead against the window glass. For a moment, his shoulders sagged. He didn't want to hurt her, he said quietly. I just snapped. I didn't think. That's the problem, Danielle replied. You don't think. And then our daughter is the one who pays for it. He turned back around, eyes wet now. I'll fix it. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anger management. I'll apologize. Just don't divorce me, Danielle. Please, I love you. I love her. Don't break up our family. Love isn't what you say when you're caught. Love is what you do. And what you've been doing to her, that's not love. You're overreacting, he insisted desperately. You know I've been stressed. The last few months at work have been brutal. I've been on edge. Just give me time. How many times have I heard that? Danielle asked tiredly. You promised 6 months ago you'd be more patient with Ava. You promised you'd read to her at night, show up for her school stuff. That lasted, 2 weeks? And then we were back here again. He had no response. Danielle walked to the hallway, grabbed the large duffel bag they used for trips, and headed for Ava's room. Where are you going? Marcus demanded, following her. To my sister's. Ava and I are leaving tonight. Tomorrow I'll find a lawyer and start the paperwork. He reached for her arm, but she jerked away so fast he stopped in his tracks. Do not touch me, she said quietly. He dropped his hand. In Ava's room, their daughter looked up from her tablet, headphones still on. Hey, sweetheart, Danielle said gently, forcing a smile. We're going to stay with Aunt Tasha for a bit, okay? Pack a few clothes and your favorite things. For a sleepover? For a while, Danielle answered honestly. Maybe a long while. Ava studied Danielle's face for a moment and then nodded. There was no shock, no protest, just a quiet sense of relief that broke Danielle's heart. Okay, Ava said. I'll pack my stuff. They folded pajamas and jeans, her favorite t-shirts, a few sweaters. Danielle grabbed Ava's most loved books and her tablet and headphones, and by the time they zipped the bag shut, Ava finally whispered, What about Daddy? Danielle knelt in front of her. We're not going to live with Daddy anymore, she said gently. You might see him sometimes, but you'll always come home to me, and you will always be safe. I promise. Ava swallowed, then whispered so softly Danielle almost didn't hear it. I'll miss him a little, but I get scared with him. With you, I feel okay. Danielle pulled her into a hug, holding back her own tears. That's all I need to know. You feeling safe is what matters. In the hallway, Marcus stood by the front door, eyes red, hands shoved into his pockets. As they came out with the duffel bag, he stepped toward Ava. Baby, he said, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have grabbed you. I shouldn't have yelled. Please, forgive Daddy. Ava shrank back behind Danielle, clutching her mother's shirt. She didn't say a word. Move, Marcus, Danielle said. Don't do this. Please, you did this. We're just leaving. He stepped aside. At the door, Danielle turned once more. This apartment was my grandmother's. The deed is in my name. Tomorrow tomorrow I'm filing for divorce. You have a week to find somewhere else to live. Leave the keys with Ms. Jenkins downstairs. If you're still here after that week, my lawyer will handle the rest. Danielle, she opened the door and walked out, holding her daughter's hand. On the second floor, Ms. Jenkins peered out again. Everything all right, baby? She asked, eyeing the duffel bag and Ava's backpack. We'll be fine. Sorry again about the noise earlier. That man's got a loud mouth and no sense, Ms. Jenkins sniffed. I heard him yelling at that child. You're doing the right thing. Danielle nodded, throat tight, and headed down the stairs. Outside, the night air was cool and smelled of blossoms from the trees lining the sidewalk. Danielle buckled Ava into her booster seat, loaded the duffel into the trunk, and slid behind the wheel. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Everything's going to be okay, baby, she said, glancing at Ava in the rearview mirror. I promise you, we're going to be just fine. Ava met her eyes in the mirror and gave a small, tired smile. I know, it's always good when I'm with you. You protect me. Danielle swallowed the lump in her throat and pulled away from the curb. The next morning, Danielle woke up on her sister Tasha's couch to the smell of coffee and pancakes. Morning, Sleeping Beauty, Tasha said, flipping a pancake in the tiny kitchen of her cozy Atlanta apartment. How'd you sleep? Like someone who didn't sleep, honestly, rubbing her eyes. Where's Ava? Still knocked out in the bedroom, Tasha said. Let her rest. I already called my lawyer friend and got you an appointment at 11. She's good, tough, fair, and no nonsense. Just what you need. Danielle wrapped her hands around the mug of coffee her sister placed in front of her and stared out the window. The morning was bright. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalk. A mom pushed a stroller. Life went on. At 11 a.m., Danielle sat in a quiet downtown office across from a woman in a dark blazer who introduced herself as Karen Miller, family law attorney. Tell me everything, Karen said, pen ready, and don't leave out details you think are small. They rarely are. Danielle told her everything about Marcus's temper, the old bruise, Ava's fear. The night before, she showed her the security footage. Karen watched the video without interrupting, her jaw tightening slightly. This is very strong evidence, she said when it ended. With this, we shouldn't have any trouble getting you primary custody and limiting his visitation. You don't want to fully terminate his parental rights? No, Danielle said. I just don't want Ava living with him. If she sees him, I want it to be on my terms, where she feels safe. No unsupervised visits. That's reasonable, Karen replied. We'll file for divorce on grounds that cover emotional and psychological abuse of the child. We'll request that any visitation be supervised and arranged through you. The apartment is in your name, correct? Yes, it's an inheritance from my grandmother. Good. He has no claim to it. We'll also make sure he pays child support. This isn't about you. It's about Ava's right to be provided for. For the first time in a long time, Danielle felt something solid under her feet again. A plan. The weeks that followed were hard but clear. Marcus called and texted, cycling through begging, accusing, apologizing, and promising to change. Danielle responded once. Ava and I are safe. You have 1 week to move out. Leave the keys with Miss Jenkins. After that, she stopped answering. The divorce moved quickly. Marcus didn't fight once he understood they had video, witnesses, and a child therapist's assessment later on. The court granted Danielle full custody. Marcus was allowed brief visits every other weekend, only in public places or in Danielle's presence at first, with strict conditions. Danielle signed Ava up to see a child psychologist, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and a warm office full of toys and art supplies. After a few sessions, she told Danielle, Ava is hurting, but she's also resilient. The most important thing she has is you. Present, stable, protective. That's huge. And Danielle could see the change. Ava slowly started to relax again. She talked more. She drew again, bright pictures of parks and animals and suns with smiling faces. She started bringing her paintings to Danielle proudly, and this time they all went up on the fridge. One Saturday morning, Ava walked into the kitchen and said, "Mom, can we go to the park today? The one with the rides and the big fountain?" Danielle smiled. "Of course, and we'll get the biggest ice cream they have." Ava squealed and hugged her around the waist. "You're the best!" That afternoon, they spent hours at the park, riding the carousel, throwing pennies into the fountain, eating too sweet cotton candy that turned their tongues bright colors. Ava laughed the way she used to, loud and carefree, her eyes shining. That night, after Danielle tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead, Ava hugged her stuffed bunny and yawned. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby? Are we always going to live like this now? Just us? No yelling? No scary stuff?" Danielle brushed a braid back from her daughter's face. "We're a team, you and me, and I will do everything in my power to keep our home peaceful and safe. Always." Ava smiled, the small, soft smile of a child finally able to relax. "Okay," she whispered. "Then I'm not scared anymore." She drifted off to sleep, breathing slow and steady. Danielle stepped out into the hallway, then onto the balcony. The same balcony where, not long ago, her daughter had sat alone, crying in the cold. Now there were potted flowers along the railing, bright geraniums and petunias. A soft rug lay on the floor with a couple of big pillows. It wasn't a place of punishment anymore. It was a little sanctuary. Danielle sank onto a pillow, leaned her back against the wall, and looked up at the stars over the city. The hum of cars, the distant sirens, the occasional laugh drifting up from the street below, all felt different now, less threatening, more like a background song to a life she was rebuilding. Leaving had been terrifying. Filing for divorce had been overwhelming. Facing Marcus in court had been draining. But sitting there, breathing in the cool night air while Ava slept peacefully in the next room, Danielle knew she had made the only right choice. Her daughter was safe. Their home was calm. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs. And that was enough. Did you like this story? Let me know in the comments which city and country you're listening from. I love reading where everyone is tuning in from around the world. Thank you so much for your support and for spending this time with me. Don't forget to check them out and subscribe so you don't miss the next life story. See you in the next one. With love and respect.